So the next thing that came out of the report was how paraplanners feel about their platform engagement. There's been plenty of activity in the platform market over the years, not least due to the replatforming which has occurred. So one of the questions we want to ask today is, the survey tells us what paraplanners most want from their platforms are, I'm going to read this off: fast response to inquiries, technical knowledge of support staff, easy to use technology, and a clear charging structure. Do the paraplanners on the panel concur with this? And is there anything else you'd like to see?
Absolutely concur, but I would add to that I think the whole lockdown situation brought some additional things out. So dealing with paperwork is, it feels like tech should be beyond that now. We shouldn't be reliant on paper forms being sent out to the advisor with little sticky tabs on, sent out to the client with little sticky tabs on, coming back to the office, then someone's got to go into the office and process it, then it gets sent off again. It adds so much delay. And I think the tech should give us opportunities well beyond that now.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that as well. So out of the 4 things that you mentioned, Rob, the one thing that I would say is the highlight, and the one that is the number 1 headline, is the easy to use technology, because that encompasses that no paperwork. You press a button and it does what you expect it to do. You don't need a training session on how to get an illustration, how to process some business. That would be the key number 1 thing, because things like a clear charging structure, I agree with that too, but if you can pull off an illustration very easily, well, there's your clear. It doesn't need to be necessarily so clear. It's very obvious how to get that information when you need it. So but from a client perspective, to make it clear and simple, yeah, that's going to be key. But yeah, the technology is a key one. It makes our lives much easier. It makes us much quicker at what we're doing, which means that we can spend our time doing the analysis, the financial planning stuff, rather than messing about with one system here and one system there and trying to work out what we're doing.
Yeah, it was on the survey. There was very little difference probably between the top 4, and then you come down to the top 7 really. And it's interesting because I agree with you, Sean, in terms of that ease of use. The platform's got to be very, very intuitive, right? The more it can be intuitive, the more you reduce the workload, the easier it is to get around. 4 out of the top 7, though, as well as technology, is around people. So fast response to inquiries, technical knowledge of support staff, getting hold of support services. So it's that balance of how can you use the tech to gain the efficiencies, a digital experience, but with that human touch, which is the thing that we're focusing on as a provider at Widows, is to make sure that those things are in place. You've got to invest in people as well as investing in your technology. If you don't, then something's going to give, and you need people there to back it up.
Yeah, agreed. Completely agree with that.
Yeah, the theme of people is coming out all through this discussion, isn't it?
Yeah,
this is what it's about. Yeah,
it's always been a people business, right? Since I joined in at the age of 16 back in 1987, it always has been, and regulation has always been there. Technology has always been evolving, but you've needed that people element, the human touch there, to work with paraplanners, to work with advisors, and they'll be there for clients as well. So I don't think we'll lose that, Rob. It's just how do we gain efficiencies to give paraplanners more time to do what they're really good at.
Yeah, absolutely. There shouldn't be, a massive call center. That is how I view it anyway. It shouldn't be a massive call center for a provider. It should just be a small group of people that absolutely know their stuff. Because you shouldn't need to call them. It should be really easy to use, and you're only calling them about a really complicated thing that nobody could work out. And when you talk to someone who's really experienced and really technical, and they say, "Oh yeah, no, that is a bit weird. You have to do it a bit of a different way," or whatever. Yeah, it should be part of the practice.
Absolutely.
I'd also like to see some of the output from the systems from some providers. I think it could potentially be improved. So I recently saw an illustration for an ISA top up that was 55 pages long. And I think sometimes we see illustrations where not all of the charges are disclosed. So we then have to go off and try and find out what transaction charges are and so on and so forth. And we want to be able to say to the client, this is the total cost of investing year 1, year 2. This is the impact that these charges are likely to have on your pot. The illustrations need to be accurate, they need to be concise, and it needs to be borne in mind that they're going to be given to a person who doesn't work in this industry and they don't know all about this stuff. It needs to be clear, it needs to be easy. And I think that's something that some providers can improve upon.
Completely agree.
Paraplanners that had most engagement with their platforms were using sort of 3 or under. Given that there's functionality and platforms basically do the same thing, do you think the opportunity to use the platform and maybe familiarity with how a platform works is what's reducing that engagement, or is it just that we need to use fewer platforms within an advice firm, given the regulators' eye on things?
My personal view would be that, using a few platforms within a financial planning firm is fine. Reducing them to the minimum number that you need is a good idea to have that. Because being familiar absolutely helps with the amount of time and familiarity with that system. And if we're reducing the amount of time we're spending doing something, we can spend more time financial planning, doing the analysis, doing the para planning stuff, rather than just playing around with systems. So I think that does help. The tricky part is, and I've seen this in practice, is where you've got a firm that has consolidated, that has acquired other businesses that already have clients. And those clients, with every business, they will have a preference for one platform or another, maybe. And when they're brought together, you've suddenly got 3 platforms that are being used, and now you've got another 2 from this other firm that have come in, and now you've got 5. And then that makes that much more tricky. So I think for the right reasons, consolidating clients onto a small number of platforms is a good idea, but you just have to be really careful about the reasons why you're doing that, and also quite agnostic to the fact that platforms, they do, like you said, Rob, they do all do the same thing. So choosing one carefully is a really tricky part.
And I think if you're doing true holistic advice, right, there isn't one solution that will meet all of your clients' needs, right? There will be that, we find that firms tend to have one primary platform where they tend to trade 60 to 70% of all of their new business in terms of what advice they're giving. There will then be maybe another platform, maybe a tertiary for different circumstances. But then there's also an off-platform solution that maybe works as you start to go down the generations, and it's looking at those for all the different cohorts. So I think you need it streamlined, agree with Sean, but you need to be able to access things where your primary platform doesn't enable you to meet the client's advice, really.
All right, so our last question then, and Jamie, I'm going to aim this at you. We obviously know Scottish Widows platform, been doing a lot of development, a lot of enhancements. How do you make paraplanners' lives easier? What are you doing that's going to help paraplanners in the future?
So I think there's a number of things we can do, right, which we've already talked about. So it's making sure we're supporting paraplanners as part of the advice value chain, and in doing so, we've got the paraplanning room that's available, and we're engaging with paraplanners more and more to make sure we're bringing in things around the systems and the integration to make their lives easier. We've got 150 million of investment that's going into the platform over the next 4 years, and we're focusing the majority of that on integration. So I've already talked about making EV Pro available, so that flow of data in terms of reporting is an awful lot easier. We've just gone live with Voyant. So for advisors who hold a Voyant license, they can now engage with the platform and get real-time data and push the data through so that it removes that key in risk, and also it creates efficiencies. And we've also done that with Origo Hub, and we'll be doing that more and more with back office systems and peripheral applications, which I've already talked about, so that we start to make efficiencies within the advice chain. And I think in engaging with the paraplanners more and more to find out where they will go over the next 3 to 5 years is really, really important. So, we've started on a really good journey around the integration, but more for us to do in making sure paraplanners' lives are easier.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that concludes our discussion today. I hope there's been some in-depth discussion around the topics and the themes that came out of the report. The report is available on the Scottish Widows website, I believe, Jamie. Yes,
that's right. Yep.
Okay, so if you want to find out more, please go along and have a look at that. I'd like to thank my guests, Sean, Alan and Jamie, for taking part in the discussion, and also Scottish Widows for enabling the research for the report. I hope everyone watching it found it useful, and it's given you some food for thought and maybe to take away and to do some discussions of your own. So thank you for watching.